A lot going on in the world. Bitcoin up at 83,000. Crypto absolutely ripping. Fed lowering quarter point. Jerome Powell saying Trump cannot fire him by law. He's not going anywhere. Go F yourself, Mr. President-elect. Markets ripping.
All software companies at 100%. They all hit all plans.
Everybody hit the plan. It's their new business acquisition is matching their churn targets. Therefore, they're growing. Everybody's back to 140%.
This is what all of our data says as well. This is what
all definitions of NRR are acceptable. Doesn't matter whether
oh my God, you guys
real or not. Right spits. It's so spicy. I don't care.
Welcome to Topline, the podcast for the best founders, operators, and investors in B2B tech. Every week, AJ Bruno, Asad Zaman, and me, Sam Jacobs, will break down what's important for you to know to be the most well-informed professionals in the market.
CEOs and founders, this is your chance to connect and grow in an exclusive CEO and founders-only environment. Pavilion's CEO Summit 2025 is happening January 22nd and 23rd in New Orleans. Forget theory. Our action-packed workshops deliver tangible takeaways to drive your strategies forward. Plus, with Pavilion's connections-first approach, you'll build lasting relationships rooted in collaboration, growth, and support. Reserve your spot now at joinpavilion.com/CEO Summit and join 150 plus high growth CEOs for 2 days of insights and meaningful connections.
All right. So, Asad, lead us off. Sorry. And if you're listening out there and you're a little frustrated with my tangents, I apologize to you.
That was a very sincere apology.
No, I meant it.
From the heart. Like immediately, I felt it.
Listen, if I were listening, I'm serious. If I were listening, I would like, oh, thank goodness Sam said it. I was like, yeah, I'll skip forward 30 seconds like it was an ad. Now here we are.
I might have talked off.
What do we got?
At this point?
Okay, let's do this. We're going to talk about the market today. We're going to spend some time on this. So here's a scorecard. The Fed has cut interest rates by 25 basis points last week. The target rate is now 4.5 to 4.75%. GDP is growing at a pretty healthy 2.8% in the US. Inflation is at 2.1%. The target is 2%, so we're quite close to that. Unemployment is at 4.1%. That's higher than we've been seeing for some time. We've been seeing it in the threes. But since inflation was an issue, interest rates had to go up to cool the economy down. And one of the things it does is it drives unemployment up. It reduces the speed at which wages are growing, which reduces inflation. So this is actually a good sign. Q3 earnings are out in the public markets, and it's been a really good quarter for public tech companies. Of those that have reported, 100% of them have beaten consensus estimates. Is that good? Is that bad? Well, the only time we've had that in recent history since 2020 was Q1 2021. Generally, this hovers around the 90% range. And then according to Pavilion in their Q3 Pulse report, 23% of companies beat target, it's up 4%, 17% hit target, down 1%, and 60% missed target, down 3%. So that's our scorecard. Sam, general reactions on this overall market update. What is this telling us about the current state when you look at all of this together?
Well, I feel a sense of I have mixed reactions to this data. I have mixed reactions to the stock market continuing to go up. I have mixed reactions to crypto surging because I am worried about some of the fundamental underlying issues impacting global economies, which relates to falling fertility rates, fewer people, over-reliance on debt. Our national debt continuing to skyrocket, a meaningful percentage of our GDP being allocated to paying down the debt. So I have concerns, and I struggle to relate the macro to the micro in the sense that, I think a lot of our businesses are doing well. Certainly, Pavilion's having a good 2024, and we've turned around and made meaningful improvements. And I think some portion of that is the economy, the tech economy stabilizing. And so I want to, my place is in the same place that it typically is when we're reacting to market feedback and market data, which is that I don't really adjust our strategic plan for the macro environment, even though I unwittingly don't always realize that our strategic plan itself is impacted by the macro environment, meaning, my experiences with retention and with churn and with growth are influenced by the macro environment, even though I think they're largely only influenced by my either stupidity or genius or the team's collective stupidity or genius. And that's where I'm at right now, which is we're seeing green shoots. We're seeing a lot of positive indications. Our business is growing, which is great. It's much more stable. That's, I think, again, just speaking we had a board meeting last week, which I mentioned when we recorded our commentary on the election episode. But the story of 2024 for us, 2023, was burning lots of capital and having a lot of unpredictability. And if you have a lot of unpredictability on a week-to-week or month-to-month basis, again, all of it relates to, do you truly have a recurring revenue business or not? If you want 6, 7, 8, if you want to be valued on a multiple of revenue, and you want to have a 6 to 8 to 9 to 10, but even just 6 to 8 times multiple, 5 to 6 to 7, whatever you want. You want to be valued on revenue, then predictability and stability is core. And obviously growth is also core, but it's not just growth. It's no wild swings in retention, no wild swings in churn, no wild swings in even total ARR. And that wasn't the case for us in 2023. And increasingly this year, it looks, feels, tastes like recurring revenue, which is fantastic. It almost doesn't matter what the number is, to be honest with you. I mean, it could be 4 million, 10 million, 30 million, obviously bigger is better. But if it's predictable and you can count on it, and period over period over period, it has a consistency to it, and it grows. Sometimes a little bit, sometimes a lot, but always grows. That's a recipe for good business. That's a recipe for investability, and that's a recipe for reasonable valuation.
Sam, there's something you just said that connects to something that's been top of mind since I read the Pulse report, which is this point you just made around predictability. The true definition of recurring revenue is that it's predictable. And then if you want to get that multiple, it has to be growing well. 60% of companies missing their target, these companies were unable to predict where they will go. And a big chunk of these companies are venture funded. And most venture funded businesses are going to burn some capital to grow. But there are those that are burning it intentionally. So they look into the future, they look at their business and that market, and they believe we can do X, so we're going to spend Y. And they achieve that. And that's investors like that. Then there are those who say we can do X, but they do something completely different. 60% did something completely different. What's going on here? Like, what is the 60%? What's going on with the 60% of companies missing their targets? That seems high. And it seems, for me, the companies I'm talking to, I'm not necessarily getting this feel, but I could be in an echo chamber where I'm only talking to companies that are investing in growth and that type of thing, and are coming from good investors, are doing well, hence they're talking to us. So I was surprised to see this number. Are you surprised, A, and B, what's happening here?
I'm not super surprised because, they say second marriages are the triumph of optimism or hope over experience, right?
I like Barca, Sam. I like this. I'm in. I'll wake up in the morning for you.
Everybody wants their baby to be beautiful, and there's this constant conversation that's happening between investor expectations, the board expectations, and what the business is actually capable of delivering. And I think targets get set not based on reality all the time, but based on, this is what is expected of a good company. And if I set the target lower, that's unacceptable. Literally, my board will not accept it. Therefore, I have to set the target here, even though everybody in the organization doesn't think it's reasonable. And even though I worry that I will be, called as the CRO or CMO, I will be called soft or just untalented or ill-equipped.
Loser.
If, a loser if I'm unable to hit that number. So I think the numbers, I think it's just a constant conversation between the people that own the company and the people that are running the company. And I think where you have, because there's also true that you can hit the number, but if the number is not exciting, it doesn't necessarily, it means that you could predict mediocrity, but that's not what we're in the business of trying to do. We're trying to be in the business of predicting excellence. So that's where all of these things are very complicated. What do targets mean? Your ability to predict do you want a business that grows? Let me ask you this question, Asad. Do you want a business that grows 70% and overshoots the target by, I don't know, 40%, right? They got the number totally wrong to the negative and it's growing super fast. Or do you want a business that's growing 30% but hits the number squarely on the dot?
For my business, the second is important.
If you were a venture investor.
If you're a venture investor, you're hoping for the first, no?
I think so, but that's the point. It's like the same thing as quota. Do you want everybody hitting quota if quota is low? Or do you want it to be high and slightly unattainable, but still have it be, a high number?
This is why they have such trouble when they transition to public companies, because in the public markets, you can't be overshooting what you told the market by such a big margin consistently. Like you can have a couple of NVIDIA quarters, but you can't be that business consistently. The market will not appreciate that. So you're supposed to have a discipline with being able to predict where we'll go and being able to hit that with a small margin, like a couple of percent above is fine. But if you're consistently 20, 30% above what you said to the market that you would be, the market actually doesn't like that. Whereas in the private market, as you're building up, that'll be celebrated.
Well, let's talk about predictability then and go back to what Sam originally said and how feeling for these numbers. You asked, how are you feeling about these numbers? I feel a little bit uneasy. The volatility is one way or another in swings doesn't make me feel great. So it actually answers that question directly, Asad, to what you just said, where like every company is hitting the numbers, but then you look at the underlying fundamentals. Well, sales cycles are going up still. They went up 10% from the beginning of the year for SMB, from 34 days to 43 days, according to, or 37 days to 43 days, according to that Pavilion report that we shared. Liquidity, is anyone getting more liquid? Are investments happening any faster in Q3? At the PE level? Is M&A outside of acquihires?
M&A is happening, but venture isn't really happening.
Yeah, and then attainment is still at a dismal 40%, even though it's gone 40 to 43%. So, like, the reality of the situation is that there's still a lot of uneasiness in this, and what I'm feeling for sure, looking at the public markets and looking at what the reality is. We're future casting. The election was a huge, huge bump because people are future casting around some of these. The interest rates continuing to go down is future casting. Powell saying, I'm going to stay in the seat, is future casting that interest rates are going to continue to get driven down. And that liquidity is going to come back. But that hasn't happened yet. And the fundamentals of businesses haven't changed overnight. I haven't looked at some of the pieces to it, like CAC, which is hard to derive at the public markets, but something that I know a lot of folks like Spitz have work to do, and that is still in a challenging spot. So I feel like I'm being told that I should be feeling great about life right now, and our own business is doing well, but I don't.
Is it doing well or great?
It's the first to the point that you made. Should a business do X or a business do Y? It was the first one, whatever that one was. Sam,
the first one was blow. Oh,
yeah, I'm just kidding. I think we're doing great.
The truth is impossible to tell. I will say the M&A markets should be a lot better next year. If the big cap M&A market, if Lena Khan's not running, what is it? The FTC?
FTC.
FTC.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's going to pick up a lot. Like, I think the M&A market, the media narrative has been that M&A is not happening. That's lies. Like, when you look at the actual numbers from a transaction perspective, 2024 is going
The
to be one of the
liquidity,
best.
though, like cash
One
in
second.
hand.
Let me explain. So 2024 is going to be one of the best years in the last 10 years from a net M&A perspective. That looks at all sizes and all industries. Then you click into tech. And in tech, you've got three types of M&A. You've got the PE side, and you've got PE and strategic, and within them, you've got three levels, which are small, mid, and enterprise. The one that's not happening is big tech acquiring big companies. That isn't happening because of the FTC. But actually, when you click in and you look at the smaller and mid-size acquisitions, again, some of the best years we've had, that's going to gain more momentum next year for a number of reasons, including just generally interest rates coming down, which gives private equity companies a little bit more of an ability to be aggressive in market because of the way that they fund these acquisitions. So they're going to be just picking up more and more steam. The FTC is going to be less aggressive. And so now you have the big companies coming in. But I think the most exciting part, the thing I'm excited about the most for next year, is to do with liquidity, and is to do with the fact that there are right now as many businesses that are private at 10 billion or more valuations in tech as there are public. But the private ones are actually growing faster than the public ones. They might be burning more capital, but they're growing faster. These are some really good businesses.
Where'd you get that data?
Battery Ventures.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And so they listed each company out, and it was really well done report.
Stripe and OpenAI have to be on the top of that list, I would assume.
Yeah, Stripe is there, OpenAI is there, but you've also got companies like Notion in there. And so I'm excited for these companies to go public because, sure, people like Lemkin said that the IPO window was never really shut. Well, that's semantics. No one wanted to go public. Going public can be one of the best days of your career as a founder CEO, and one of the best days for your company if you do it right and you get a pop. But if you do it wrong, it's like a kick in the nuts, and you can't sustain too many kicks in the nuts. And so why would somebody want to go public last year or even this year? You're going to wait till when the setup is right, if you can. And so now these companies are going to go public, and that will help the ecosystem a lot. So I'm quite excited about that part. What about the first half of the year, AJ? Do you think it's going to look and feel just like this right now? Like, what are you future casting for the first half, or even for most of next year? What's your take on this?
Well, operationally, as we go through our financial plan, I think like the challenges that we have are known, and those are all hands on deck and focusing on those. And those inflection points in the financial plan will mean that we'll have some, like, let's say we have a group of 10 metrics, KPIs, and we've hit 8 of them. My goal is to hit all 10. Of course, target, want to be on point, and I just need to make sure that we hit those last 2. And that's what I'm 100% focusing on for the business, micro, operationally. For startups, I would recommend the same thing for founders. The other thing that I'm doing that I really enjoyed this year is doing a quarter by quarter financial plan sign off. So we do a yearly, we do a pro forma for 2 years.
Yeah.
Bring that back to a year, and then cut it quarter by quarter to have a sign off on. I've really enjoyed that because it's allowed the business to get a clear focus.
How are you operationalizing that? Like, so what does that look like? When in the quarter are you looking at it? Who's looking at it? What's the cadence? How are you doing this?
Well, it's not a ton of legwork, given that we're doing the yearly financial planning still in cycle. And then what we're seeing is, hey, how do these different metrics, how did it basically transpire? Did we hit what we thought we were going to hit? And which of the 10 do we need to like tweak and rethink a little bit, but still give the overall shape to the business the same, and both in terms of growth and costs? Those are the 2 main ones, like kind of having like a holding an anchor and a North Star metric for us. Given that there's just a ton of uncertainty in what, the FTC, the labor market, what financial institutions, like there's just a lot of uncertainty of what next year is going to look like. It's a change in regime on the political side for the US. I think my goal is to ensure that we have as much predictability as we possibly can. And to do that, I want to shorten that time horizon, time window, so that at the end of the quarter, to answer your question, we can say, okay, what did transpire on the macro level? Does it affect us in any way? Most likely not. So let's continue on.
And if you look back the last 4 quarters or however since you've been doing this, how often has that exercise led to an adjustment? Because for it to be really useful, you actually end up
We're adjusting it every quarter, and by design, on purpose. And like a lot of that's making it to the board level of like me just transparently saying like, hey, here's what we're seeing, and the board's seeing this in some of the metrics we're seeing. But as long as we're not adjusting the overarching anchor of like, this is what the growth rate is going to look like. This is what our cost is going to look like. So those are the two main ones that I want to make sure that we hit and don't have, because once that happens, kind of unlocks the ability for us to make those adjustments. If I had a strategic CFO, which I don't have a CFO in the business today, I think it might be a different conversation, and that person might have enough cycles and experience to go through it. But I've talked to, you all talked to lots of CFOs yourself. There was a challenge this year on what this year was going to look like. There were some bigger private companies that truly just didn't know what growth was going to look like. And what I found in talking to them post this is that there are some quarters they've done really well. And there are other quarters, like last quarter, I know 3 presidents, CEOs, or CFOs that all missed their targets in Q3. And these are $100 million plus companies. And there was some challenges and tensions at the board level in those organizations. And I think that it's tough because quarter to quarter, we're seeing these pretty large swings in some of these businesses. I just want to go back to as much predictability for the business as I possibly can, and focus on customers. So like those two things will just continue to be my guiding light in 2025 is predictability, business, customer focus for AJ.
Sam, when you hear AJ say this, and you talk to so many CROs and founders on a regular basis, how many of them do you think have developed the right discipline around forecasting? Because I'm still thinking about the 60% number, because 60% missing means so many companies just burnt more capital than they should have. And this has now been happening for a few years now, right? Like 2022, mid 2022 till now, this has become quite a consistent part of the ecosystem where we've just gotten forecasting what's possible wrong. Do you think that companies have developed the right discipline around being able to do this, or is part of why we're missing to do with a lack of operational rigor and finesse with this particular type of exercise?
I think there's been stratification and a separation, a bifurcation this year. 2023, everybody was going down. 2024, the people that can adapt and that had the capacity to develop rigor developed it, and the people that, for whatever reason, don't have the same capabilities or talents are lagging behind. And so to answer your question, do I think that this is a fundamental capability? Absolutely not. I think that, you got a lot of, when we're looking at startups and scale-ups, the truth of the matter is that these are not people that have run businesses for 30 years. Oftentimes there's no formal training ground for a lot of the people that are running these companies. You can say an MBA is, but I don't think any of us actually believe that an MBA is going to prepare you to run a company. So what prepares you to run a company? Well, the main thing that prepares you to run a company is watching other people run companies and trying to work at companies that are run really well. And if you happen to work at companies that were, growing hand over fist in the ZERP era, then you probably didn't learn enough of the lessons that you needed to. We have a monthly cash flow forecast that looks out 7 to 8 months. And we have been very, very accurate in our cash flow forecasting. And we are beating our budgeted revenue plan by a meaningful amount. And we are, but we're slightly off in our expense plan. But the point is, collectively, the feeling that you get from me talking about Pavilion as a company, if you're on the board and you get one of my, and also I send a weekly update, and that every week I go over all of the key metrics, and I go over what's happening from a cash perspective, and then I start with what's happening from a customer perspective, similar exactly to what AJ just said. And so where did that discipline emerge from? That emerged last year. Necessity is the mother of invention. And when we were spending untold amounts of capital, especially in the second quarter of last year, we had to start building. And at first it was a 13 weekly cash flow forecast. Now we look at it on a monthly basis and we extend it out. And I think the last cut I've seen, we already have a point of view on June and July of 2025, and it's October. Now, we haven't finalized our revenue plan, and so everything in there is conservative. So the picture isn't as optimistic as I would like it to be. But all of this is, and now I have a VP of finance that has strategic financial expertise and can talk about things in the right way, which we didn't have before. Once you have that kind of financial lens in the business, it makes a big difference. So I feel my focus is exactly what AJ said: predictability and customer centric. When the more, especially in my business, the more I talk about money and revenue, it tends to be the less well that I do. And the more I talk about helping customers, the better we do. Now, we have a revenue plan, and I think that's step one. Step one is the more I talk about customers, the better I do. Fair enough. But how much better do you do? And that's step two. Step two is you still have to define a formulaic relationship between your Zen approach to customer centricity and how much you want to help customers and what you think the financial implication and impact of that helping of customers will be. Even if it's less than what you might want it to be, you still have to have a point of view on exactly how much revenue will grow because you're helping customers and focused on them. And that's something that we continue to work on. But for as far as I'm concerned, where were we relative, especially to a year and a half ago, eons. Yeah. And we were already north of we were more than a $10 million business a year and a half ago. This isn't and my point is many companies got past 10 million, 15 million, maybe as far as 20 million, and still didn't have basic data infrastructure, this is why, much to your chagrin, RevOps is important. David O'Brien says it has, direct report to him, but regardless, it doesn't matter the reporting structure. What matters is that there are still many companies that don't have core foundational data infrastructure. As a consequence of that, they don't have core foundational perspectives on customer health, right? They understand their pipeline. They still don't know who's going to renew and who's not going to renew. They still are reactive, where everything is in response to somebody requesting to cancel, as opposed to looking at the data and saying this person is probably going to request to cancel and it's 6 months from their renewal. So let's design an intervention right now to make sure we get in front of them, and not just get in front of them and say, what are you working on, but get in front of them with the prescribed recommendation on what they should do to re-engage with the product and with the experience that you're trying to deliver. So I guess it's a very long answer to your question. I think 60% is because we haven't worked through all of I don't know that it's ever going to be super high, though.
Yeah.
By definition, these are companies that are trying to change the world. They're trying to bend the universe. Growth is an unnatural thing most of the time. You're trying to change people's minds.
That's a good point.
And it tends to be true that founders and CEOs, we're all optimistic about our ability to change people's minds because I'm sure AJ is like this. I'm sure you're like that. I'm like this. For the first time a couple of weeks ago, thanks to, Apollo, Josh Carter, and some, data enrichment probably through copy.ai. I know exactly, like I could do a screen share. I'm not going to, but I could do a screen share of the list of people in the world on planet Earth that we think should be members of Pavilion. And I have that by total addressable market, sales addressable market, sales obtainable market. So I have the smallest near-term cut, the bigger cut, and the larger cut. And I know by the human being, which human beings.
Josh is not against.
He's quite good at what he does. And so so my point is, I'm looking at that TAM, which is 1.2 million people, and we have 10,000 members, and I'm salivating all the time, and I'm always going to think that we should grow way faster. And the truth is that we exist in the world, and people don't wake up every day thinking that they need commission planning software or to hire a search firm or to join a community. And so we have to change their minds about that, and it's never going to be quite as big as we want it to be. All of that is to say 60% doesn't sound crazy to me. I think there's a mixture of incompetence and optimism that you need when you're trying to build a high-growth company.
Yes.ai enables your CEO, subject matter experts, and other senior leaders to engage prospects directly, creating meaningful connections and boosting response rates. With just one click, Your team can strategically involve senior staff to make your outreach more credible and effective. Empower your GTM team to orchestrate your outbound process and say yes to yes.ai. That's YESS.ai.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then there's also this mix of, so you've got the incompetency around planning forecasting. You've got an improved market, but not equally for all, because some companies, while the market's improving for everyone, have headwinds from AI. Like an extreme example of that is this company, Chegg. Chegg was an education technology company that in 2020, their market cap in 2020 was $16 billion. When ChatGPT was introduced, in the next earnings call, they took a 50% hit in their stock price. Since then, it has now declined a total of 99% from its peak, and it's
That's insane.
$116 million market cap.
What are they doing in revenue?
They have introduced AI into the mix. They have partnered with OpenAI. They've done all sorts of things, but they have just been demolished. And what is their revenue? Let me see for you.
I mean, are they trading at less than 1x? I remember Chegg.
683 million in revenue, meaning that their market cap is a fraction of their revenue. That's how the market
They must
views
have an
them.
insane debt. I don't know. I don't understand the
It's
financial.
not debt. It's just the market believes that
The market
this
doesn't
is
believe
just
the
going to
revenue is worth
continuously
anything.
come down. So you're not worth even your revenue because your revenue is just constantly burning out.
Yeah, no, I understand. I think that it's an interesting dichotomy to look at the types of things that Sam is talking about in predictability, and then what's happening. And like, I don't know where Expensify's market cap is, but it was a kind of a similar situation they went through. Asad, I would, while you're looking that up, Asad, I would look at your business. And I know you've said on this podcast previously that you go into a year thinking about it, you're at zero. And so I said quarterly. Sam, we talked about yearly. We talked about, we have June 2025. Are you every single month, every single day, just looking at those types of forecasts in your business?
My business?
Yeah.
No, not really. I think I have this mindset.
What's your number one leading indicator? Do you look at pipeline?
Yeah, pipeline is the most important.
What's
I look
your
at
dashboard?
my dashboard is basically the flow of revenue. So it is leads coming in, leads converting to projects, projects moving through stages. So we actually
And you guys are never contingent. You're always contingency, right? You don't have any retainers.
No, we are about now 50-50. So basically,
it's
anything
different than it used to be.
Yeah, so now we have 50%.
He doesn't have any quotas. He doesn't care about quotas, Sam.
The contingent practice is amazing, but it's like our usage-based pricing entry point type of thing for certain accounts. So if somebody has a one-off, they're looking for individual contributors and a handful of them. We'll do it on contingency. We're down for that. We did Pavilion's work on contingency, but it's exclusive contingency, so it's a little bit more protected. And we are closing at this point 75% of our contingent projects. The market average is 20%. So we're really happy with that. But if companies want more than 2 or 3, then we sell them a higher pack, which is a pack researchers that's retained, and then everything on exec is retained. And exec is now about 40 to 45% of the business. Leadership searches are another 20-30%, and the rest is individual contributors. So the business has changed a lot in the last couple of years. And so it's important for us to see how things are flowing. To answer your question, once it becomes a project, you can monitor it through its various stages. So we're at the starting point of a project. We now have candidates in play. They're in the final stages, the offer stage, etc. And we have conversion rates for each of them. And then you see how it's playing out. The mindset that we have is that we don't have recurring revenue, but obviously a lot of it reoccurs. So we have lots of clients that have worked with us for 4, 5, 6 years over and over again. But I think the mindset for a services firm is important to be, for a firm like ours, should be, we have no customers that are going to repeat, and we need to go and find a bunch of new ones every quarter. And so that has helped us a lot, because we don't try to convince ourselves that we're a tech company and we'll get a revenue multiple and all those things. To answer your question about Expensify, it's a $250 million market cap. What was it at its peak? Do you remember?
At its peak, I mean, it opened. If it's probably at $3 a share, it was opened at 30. It was probably 10x that. I guess, I don't know, something like that.
And is this another example of like an AI AI
A company that just, I think, well, no, I think even worse for them is that their market changed so rapidly. Divvy, Ramp, Bill.com, and just all basically the expenses, like expense management, became almost like a Zenefits platform, where that was free, but it was all about spend management, and it was a race to the bottom for in terms of the card and the perks that you could offer / interest rate. So it's just like,
that's a really good point, right? So it's not just that AI has headwinds. There's also this increased competition means somebody tackles the problem you're tackling with an interesting angle to it.
yeah,
And the
the
market
business model
leans into
changes
that.
and shifts because the cost of building the management, the product of the expense management platform went way down. So it became this like, well, how do you actually do it? Now, Zenefits, what's the throwback example, had lots of internal culture issues, and I feel like it's worked out just fine for the founder of Zenefits, who runs Rippling today. But what's his name? I forget.
Parker Conrad. Yeah.
Parker Conrad.
That was a tumultuous end to Zenefits.
Yeah, but Rippling is another private company that's doing probably close to $1 billion in revenue, hasn't gone public.
Yeah, they're on fire. That's one of the coolest companies I've ever seen because their approach is so different. Like this compound startup approach is genuinely amazing.
Workflow, yeah, but just pulling in, they have 30 different SKUs under their umbrella. Yeah. Plus they work with partners really well. And I know this.
So one of the things that I've been thinking about as we go into next year is kind of tied to this operational side of running a business, which is there's a whole new web architecture that companies have to get used to now because of AI. There's a whole new go-to-market architecture that is becoming known and implemented, and some are doing it well and some are not. But those who are doing it well are seeing some massive benefits. So the companies are going to have to wrestle with what this new age version of go-to-market looks and feels like. With that comes changes in pricing. And with changes in pricing come implications on the hiring profile and sales and even commission structures. How do you pay these people? We've spoken to people that are moving from seat-based pricing to usage-based pricing, and they're thinking about how do you pay these reps? And it's not like there's a clean and simple framework available in the market. Just take this, do this. Like all of this is being figured out. These are some really big, intense things. Even at an individual level, you put them all together. This is a really hard problem to solve. AJ, what are your thoughts on this? Like you're running a tech business of the sort that's going to be wrestling with each of these problems next year. How do you think about these challenges? How do you stagger them in terms of which ones you tackle at which point? That seems like the only way to do it is like, let's solve it one by one.
Well, there was an interesting thing that I think you had made the comment, or it was somewhere, maybe it was in one of the posts that you made, Jameen Balls, I don't know, remember, but something about AI security, and now it's about the commercialization of AI. And
Tomas made that point. Yeah,
Tomas made that comment. Was it completely different? Sam and I read the same one. By the way, just as a side note, Tomas came out with a newsletter that was completely written by AI over the weekend.
Wasn't that so
pretty
cool?
Interesting. It was, but I actually didn't read it. It felt really choppy and a little disjointed in my opinion, but
he was walking through the workflow of how he did it, which was
he talks
really and riffs, and then
he's coming back in January to do his predictions with us.
Yeah, the sentences felt like they were a very riffy type of, but it was really interesting and fascinating. And one thing that was just to your point, Asad, or question around which of these am I thinking about, like the AI piece of it and how to become an AI first company, certainly top of mind. The security part of AI, don't think has been solved. So wherever that statement was, I disagree with that as a part of it, even from a startup perspective, one that is probably more.
We were talking about that. He ran a survey and he said basically that in the survey, the respondents said that the number one concern they had last year with AI was security. The number one concern they have right now is ROI.
Does that mean we've solved
That's not to say that it isn't a concern still and that it has been solved. It's just that now they're saying, is there even an ROI to this more than they're talking about all the other
An
things?
ROI in building
ROI in implementing, right? Like if I'm implementing this thing in my enterprise, like is there real ROI? Now, obviously,
in the context of Apple, now that I remember it.
No, it was just in the context of enterprise level buyers and a big selection of them. But you and I were talking about the Autodesk example earlier. There are companies that are getting ROI. So there is a massive distribution in terms of what you see from your purchases based on the chops of the team that's actually buying and implementing it.
Yeah, that was probably a big part of it. Long story short, to go back, you got to take it a week at a time, because if you try to focus on all three of those at the big picture, you're gonna set yourself up for failure. And I think just even having these conversations and talking about which of these, where are we shifting focus or not shifting focus, is just kind of like the important part to it.
You must be at the tip of the spear when it comes to pricing model changes and the implications in sales commission plans. Have you noticed like a big subset of your customers have moved from a specific style of commission plan to this new version? Like, are you noticing anything within the Protopop data set?
In fact, if anything, it's getting worse.
What's getting worse?
The complexity of compensation plans, where how I read Asad's question is like, hey, your customers, they have sales reps. Those sales reps have a business model that they're operating off of. When that business model might change, there's going to be changes to comp plans. What we are noticing is that there's a lag between the types of comp plans and what the business is actually doing and how it's doing it. And the reason for that, this is just all anecdotal, but I think one part of it is that a lot of our champions or decision makers or admins of the platform have changed this year. We've had probably the highest turnover rate in admins we've ever had as
Interesting.
That's interesting.
It's again anecdotal, but I'm seeing this. People, revenue operations leaders are very expensive if you're good at your job. So they're sought after. There's a lot of people poaching, and bigger revenue operations teams are not viewed positively, because in Asad's words, they're support functions versus mission revenue drivers, which might be also true. And so when you think about those two things are at odds at each other, there's a lot of change and a lot of turnover. And so those teams are under a ton of stress that our teams are seeing firsthand. That customer stress is being put on our team. I heard, and we talk about CX, I just recently started working more closely with the customer success operations of QuotaPath, and that team is saying outright, hey, I am working 2 times as much as I was last year. There's a lot of reasons for this, but the main driver that I can see is that comp plans aren't changing. There's more delays than there ever has been. There's more questions. We have a customer that signed up in April, and they didn't have their 2025 comp plans. I checked back in; they still don't have their 2025 comp plans. And right before this call, I asked the rep, how are they even paying their team right now? I don't even know, and I'll find out. But like that's becoming more and more of a problem. And so I would say, like, no, we are not seeing companies and teams proactively change how they're paying their teams. And in fact, the gap in the delta between the business model and the sales team's variable comp is becoming greater.
That is very interesting. That turnover part is really fascinating. Sam.
Well, actually, let me ask you this, Asad, really quickly before we jump. Am I wrong on that? And I know revenue operations leaders is probably a very, very, very small part of it, and maybe given your feelings on the role itself, not a part of it at all. But I'm curious: what do you see in hiring?
So here's what I'm seeing with regards to the shift to usage. Like, I do think a lot of I've never had so many conversations about our pricing model is changing. Tell us how we should rethink our hiring profile. That is a very consistent conversation I'm having. And that's the right conversation to have, because if you are a traditional SaaS company, the type of AE you would hire is different to the type of AE you would hire if it is usage based. Because with usage based, you sign on a customer and there's a forecast that you have to put together. And then you have to work with them to get that going for the first year. It's different than what a traditional AE would do. So the hiring profile changes.
Can I ask a question? When
Yes,
you say
sir.
the hiring profile changes, sometimes here's my cynical read on what you say. Like, I feel sometimes you're like, it just means you have to, you were willing to hire a crappy salesperson and now you have to hire a good salesperson.
Kind of, yeah. It's kind of that though, right? Like the more complex the job, the better the person's gotta be. Is kind of a way to think about it, right? Like if you have extreme product market fit, or if you have something simple, you can get a simpler person to do it. If the conversation is going to be more complicated, there's more friction, there are more steps, there are more stakeholders, it's going to be harder. It's actually the reason why the failure rate between SMB to mid-market is so high, like AEs transitioning. That's actually the highest failure rate, is that transition in sales. And the reason is the job changes so much. You go from like 1 or 2 call closers to now essentially project management and stakeholder management. And so the bar is higher, hence only a small subset can make it. And so if you're hiring right now in this market, yeah, that's really what it means, Sam. The person has to be a lot more intelligent than they would have had to be before. And the person has to be, I think, more emotionally intelligent as well, because they're going to be involved a bit longer than they used to be before. So that is how it changes. Now, the second part that I found interesting is, how are you paying these people? So that's become a very common question. Last week, I had 3 conversations of this sort. And what most companies seem to be doing is the rep forecasts what this account can do over the course of a year. They calculate what the commission implication would be. They pay 50% of it upfront, and then they pay 50% of it as it gets actualized. Now, that means as you're raising capital, a big chunk of it is going towards paying reps.
That seems a little insane.
Doesn't that? That seems bananas.
You're paying them half their commission up front?
Half of it up front. Like I've heard somewhere between 30 to 60%. Like I heard 60%, I heard 50%, I heard 30%.
Why does that sound insane, Sam?
Because
the commission, this isn't the base salary. He's not saying you're paying a year in advance, you're paying half the commission up front.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a draw. Like we're seeing that type of draw. I think draws have become much more of a not requirement, but they've been a product requests ask more this year than they ever have been.
AJ, you're a sales leader. Let me ask you this. If the rep
doesn't that worry you about motivation? I mean, maybe it's just
100%. I don't agree with it.
I'm hiring a 28-year-old kind of dipshit account executive. Sorry, no, seriously.
We brought swearing back to people.
Sam's brought back the bad words. He's like, open the scan last 2 episodes.
In Spain, they don't care.
By episode 3, we're going to jump in, Sam. Then it's bananas.
I love that some people are also like, 28-year-old, don't be an ageist. Anyway, I'm just saying, like, a sophomoric, annoying person that had that worked at Stripe for a couple of years and thinks they're great, and now they're working at a harder company. We're going to pay that person half of their commission up front. I mean,
yeah. I mean, I've heard.
I've worked at. I was at the Muse, and I remember this woman hadn't closed a deal all quarter, and she was taking a 2-week vacation before the end of the quarter, and I mean, that woman is definitely, she's not showing up to work. She's just going to go look for another job.
But also
what if I could get a draw at 3 places
directly?
Like what I'm going to do is I guess it's a draw. You're going to claw it back. But what if I don't let you claw it back? What if I disappear to Barcelona?
Yeah. What you going to do?
What you going to do?
And the other part is not everybody was doing it as a draw, AJ. Like actually, I didn't hear the word draw. They were just like, we pay the commissions up front. But
weirdest
now if you as a rep are tied to getting paid based on the forecast you're putting together, why would you give a low forecast? You're like, all your forecasts will be huge, all your commission checks will be massive.
For Enron.
Then you move on.
When I worked at Enron in the Enron International, it was exactly this. You would forecast the NPV.
Wait, you worked at Enron? Do I know?
Yeah, I worked at Enron, 1998. And I worked in their international division where they were building all these hydroelectric power plants all over the world. And it was exactly this. You'd have a broker that would model out the deal, and they would be paid a cut of the NPV, the estimated net present value of the deal.
Yeah. So like you hear this and we hear this and we're like, okay, go back to the original question. How are you feeling? You hear these stories. Not
Yeah,
great,
not good.
Asad. Not great. It's not good, Bob.
Because I think when you're raising venture, it just changes how you would deploy that venture, because now such a big chunk of it is going to go towards commissions that actually haven't been earned yet because the customer hasn't used it. And we're a Series A company. Well, what if we don't have product market fit? Like, how do you forecast this? This is so bananas.
There's got to be a good reason why Warren Buffett is holding so much, $200 billion in cash right now. He's bought $5 billion in equities and he has sold
last time he held this much
$170
cash was right before the GFC. Hold on, but one question. So the commission rate, putting aside the insanity of paying half a year's commissions up front, what is the commission rate standardizing to for usage base? Is it higher or lower? You know, if you think that like on average a SaaS commission rate for
This is a big debate right now.
super early stage companies, maybe when you're finding product market fit, it gets 15 to 20%, but like maybe as you stabilize, you get 10% of like the deal. Are you getting higher than 10%?
So the debate that's happening right now, it's actually not been figured out. All of this is in the works. So the debate is, some people are saying, change the split between base and variable to 60-70% base, 30% variable, which means that your commission rate would come down. Others are saying you keep your commission rate high, your commission being 50% and base being 50%, so a similar split to traditional SaaS, but what you're going to do is you're going to pay a higher rate in the first few quarters and it tapers down over time. Like, so there are these different things that people are coming up with.
The aggregate blended rate, does it still come out to about 10%?
If you're doing 50-50, it'll come out to 10% roughly, yeah. Like it'll come out to similar to what because you're paying out similar, right? So if your average deal size is this much and you're going to pay out, 50%. And
well, that's interesting because you might say, I guess where I'm going with this is that you would pay a higher commission rate on SaaS if you didn't have to pay on the renewal, or you paid a lower rate on the renewal and you had high confidence that the cost of service was going to go down. Then it's like, okay, I will pay a lot, right? And maybe I'll pay 12%, 15%, of the contract value to the salesperson, because I know that I won't have to pay them 12% of the renewal, right? Because I'll pay the CS team spiff or whatever like that, but I'm not paying them 12% of the renewal.
So yeah, an Amazon card.
And my point is, in usage-based, there is no real renewal. It's just kind of forever. So then if you're paying 12 or 15% forever, again, now the business model is broken.
It will transition to an account management type of team over time, right? I think what they're trying to do is the AE stays in there for a year, and then towards the end of the year, it transitions to somebody else. Some people are looking at like a 2-year hold. Some people are looking at a 1-year hold. But it will transition to essentially a lower cost team over time. The thing that I think is interesting is actually what Mark Roberge said on our episode, which was you pay them a commission rate on actualized revenue, but that commission rate is dependent on them signing on a certain number of net new accounts every month or every quarter, depending on your sales cycle or deal size type of thing. So they have to keep doing the new business stuff. They can't just like become wealth managers with a book of business and keep making money. They have to keep doing the new business stuff, but then they make money over time. Your challenge becomes the first quarter, essentially, if you're SMB mid-market, maybe 2 quarters if you're mid-market. And there you should do a draw. You should not be upfront paying commissions. Like, that is bananas. Even draws are super dangerous. Like, how are you going to recover a draw? You're going to take them to court for $15,000?
Also, the recruiting world and industry has been doing draws like this for quite some time, right?
Yeah, but draws come with risk, man. Like, you have to be very careful. Like a Series A company with no product market fit doing draw versus STA does draws. I was on a draw till I became a CEO, but I
don't understand that because I understand if it was in a labor market where, from a recruitment standpoint, it was needed as an extra incentive potentially. We're not in that market. So I'm just kind of confused as to why we even need to come up with...
No, the market's really hard for talent right now. It is. It's intense.
For sales talent?
Yeah, it's bananas. We've busy as hell. I'm usually very skeptical of Q4. We have a cyclical Q4, like where Q4 is down. This is the busiest Q4 we've had in years.
Wow.
In just the last 4 weeks, I have spoken to Silver Lake, USV, like a number of big firms, like
I wonder if they're planning to get sales teams for cross-sell, upsell product for the acquisition roll-ups that they predict will be
That's interesting.
happening in Q1, Q2. If you're talking to all these PEs, then that's my take, is that they're getting their distribution sales team a model. They're like, we're going to acquire all these teams and companies. We're going to get rid of all those sales teams. We need to go create sales teams that rule one team to rule them all.
the most important part of the scorecard for the CROs that they're hiring is that you can help integrate these various teams and make sense of this. We have 5 acquisitions. How do you make sense of this? I think the point around sales talent, though, is that it's just a much better market than it was a year ago. So if you're trying to hire really good people, it is competitive. If you're just trying to put butts in seats, it's totally easy to do that. But to hire good people is hard. And somebody that is doing usage has a higher bar for who they can let in because usage is more complicated. And so that's the challenge. They're trying to bring in the people that can do usage in a company that has early signals of product market fit, harder job. And so they're just few and far between. And those people are coming from spots where they are making money already. So they're like, why will I take the risk of not making any variable for 6 months? You've got to share this risk with me, which is fair on the other side as well. So it's a very complicated situation right now. Okay, I think that is
Sam's dog is not enjoying Barcelona right now.
How's that been, Sam? How are the dogs doing?
Well, right now they're being monsters, and they and they're taking advantage of people. That's what Ozzy does. He says, "If you don't know how much food to give me, the answer is more."
He needs
This is a man.
Siesta. It's time for a siesta soon, right?
It's like he's got.
I know how to look hungry.
He carries around his belly with him. When he lies on his side, it's like he's got a little cannonball. It's like this dude is not in shape.
Did you take both of them with you?
Yeah, I took both of them with me.
Wow.
Do they have to quarantine?
Nope. They had to, and all of the work is getting them on the plane in the first place. And then once they're on the plane, the Spanish customs people and immigration people, they didn't say it.
They love them.
Like, come on in. So,
okay.
All right. Shout outs and wins of the week.
AJ.
Oh, me? I'm going to give one to Colin Denny of Pavilion. I think
Nice.
Colin she's done a fantastic job over the last 6 months on helping at least me wrangle cats on guests, or just in general, keeping it top of mind with the newsletter and metrics. And I'm not sure. I'm sure Sam has given her a shout out at some point, but I appreciated it. She helped me out just this weekend in
that's nice.
making sure I was on top of it. So thank you, Colin.
Shout out to Colin. Okay, I'll run it. Sam, you can end it. I thought this was really interesting. So we've been talking about the implications of AI for businesses endlessly, but there's obviously this other implication, which is on scientific discovery. And there's some really interesting data that's come out, which is that AI-assisted materials discovery boosted the number of new discovered materials by 44%. Patent filings are up 39%. And the number of new prototypes are up 17%. And so its impact in transforming scientific discovery it's significant already. And we're still in the early days of this shift from the type of models we were dealing with initially to these reasoning models. And we're still in the early days of it. And to see this type of thing is really exciting because you can start extrapolating towards things like cancer research, customized medication for people with the types of illnesses that used to kill them before, or where the treatment options were really, really harsh as well. It was like chewing glass to get chemo. And so I'm just really excited for what this means for the world. So shout out to everybody that was wrestling with this and figured all this out.
Love that. I'm going to give a shout out to the executive leadership team at Pavilion. We had a great board meeting last week. Carly Pallas, Kathleen Booth, Tom Andrews, Nick Tarnoff, and me. Thanks everybody for all your hard work. They put together a great presentation, but more than that, we've had a great year. And, the big piece of feedback we got a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, was we don't understand the business. I was a board member saying, I don't think you understand your own business. And I think we have shown with clear and compelling data and evidence and forecasting ability that we understand it better than we ever have. And it's also about, to the point of what AJ said, it's about serving customers, delivering value, helping people. Once you do that, money comes from that, not before.
That's so cool. I think that's really cool.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to Topline. Sorry for the interruptions from my young man, Oswald. He is he's a stubborn guy, but he's actually quite lovable in person.
He is quite adorable.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
This episode was brought to you by AirCall, the business communications intelligence platform. Deliver a better experience for your customers and your teams at AirCall. That's AIRCALL.io. Save time, save money, and improve performance with a single communications platform.
Thanks for listening to Topline. New episodes come out every Sunday. If you like what you heard today, subscribe so you never miss an episode, leave a 5-star review, and share it with your friends. Don't forget to join our Topline Slack channel to connect with us and discuss the topics we cover with other listeners. Click the link in the show notes. Lastly, if you're interested in joining Pavilion, you can learn more about membership at joinpavilion.com/membership. Thanks again for listening.